Okay, good afternoon, my time. Yes, so it's yet again another day in the live session, and today we'll be taking a dive into the day in the life of a penetration tester. My name is DTM Tao, and I'll be your host for today's session. I'm really looking forward to a very great time with all of you. As I already said, guest is here, and I'll be taking time to introduce him and we'll dive straight into questions and know what the typical pen tester does daily. Their reminder, our guest today is not a newbie, so yes, he'll obviously be giving his expert opinion. So before I go on to let Mike on stage, I'm just going to have everyone just in the chat box tell me what you think, who you think a pen tester is. Who do you think a pen tester is? In the chat box really quickly, I'll be going through and reading. So who do you think a pen tester is? Before Mike goes on to tell us more about the life of a pen tester. I'll be looking out for those responses, so keep them coming. All right, so while we're at it, I'm going to be reading Mike's bio. So today we're joined by Mike Lisi. I hope I got the name right. I really hate to have ruined the name. All right, so we're being joined by Mike Lisi. Give me a second. All right, the answers to the questions are already coming in. That's interesting. So I think I'm just going to read one before I go on and read his bio. Okay, so someone says in simple terms, a pen tester is an ethical hacker. Oh, wow, okay. Well, not more people are going for that. And someone says, pen testers are cybersecurity professionals that detect vulnerabilities in the network or web-based application before threat actors have a chance to implement their plans. Wow, that's quite a detailed response. I hope that wasn't a bit helped by Google or Google. I'm sorry, Google. I hope that wasn't Google inspired. All right, but yes, you've all had made really valid points, and I'm really looking forward to having Miley take us through this session. So give me a minute. I'm going to be spotlighting Miley in a minute. Just hang in there. Mike rather in a minute. Just hang in there. Give me a second. Please keep the responses coming in. I'm actually anticipating seeing more responses. As many words as you can. So the thing is, if you say things, if you define things, it makes it easier for you to remember them. So feel free to interact and tell me what that is. All right, so I'm having a bit of a difficulty, yes. Sorry for the hold up. My computer is having a swell time. It's having a swell time right now. But I should be able to read out soon enough. Okay, so Mike is a cybersecurity professional with more than 12 years of experience in various capacities. We'll be getting to know all of those capacities when he starts to speak. He currently works as a consultant and penetration tester through his company, Maltech Labs, which focuses on network and web application testing. Prior to being a consultant, Mike worked for a defense contractor where he performed research and development on offensive and defensive cyber weapon capabilities for the Air Force Research Lab. Mike holds the OSCP and GWAPT and CEH certifications. Wow. Mike volunteers as a guest speaker, like he's just done now, and a mentor for local colleges where he speaks about information security careers, cybersecurity competitions, where he speaks about information security careers, cybersecurity competitions, and conferences. Mike is also a co-founder of ITAS Itakasek, I hope I got the pronunciation right, a cybersecurity meetup group in upstate New York. So we're going to be joined by Mike Lacey. I'm just going to be adding him to the spotlight. Thank you. Hi, Mike.
Good afternoon slash good morning from New York.
Oh, yes. Good afternoon. It's nice to have you. Thank you for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is my time, talking internationally. So this is super exciting for me as well.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so ladies, just give a round of applause to Mike. He's going to be taking us through, the journey, the life of a pen tester, a penetration tester. Just give him all of the love in the comment section. Thank you. All right, so it's my culture for those who have been here before. I like to start off my sessions with an icebreaker. So I just want you to tell me, aside for your love of dogs, which I can obviously see from your picture, can you tell me one interesting thing about you, something non-cybersecurity related?
I'm a big movie and TV buff. Like I spend a lot of time, probably too much, watching some movies and TV when I have time. I just welcomed our second child 2 months ago, so it's been kind of a new adventure with a toddler and a baby in the house. So I haven't had much time for much else, but it's something I like to do when I'm able to.
Oh, congratulations, Mike. All right. Oh, well, you can see the chat box. Everyone is beaming with joy and congratulating you. Welcome. Congratulations on your newborn. Okay, so series, movies. That's really interesting. I'm sure a lot of people will think penetration testers don't have that much of a life. So basically, we're trying to let them know what it looks like daily. So I'm just going to go through a couple of questions with you so we can help people understand what it means. I understand that this differs from person to person, but then again, we want to get to know you, Mike, because you're a really interesting person. Okay, so I want you to share a bit on your career journey, from when you started. I don't know if you started from the bottom or, what that has been like for you. Just give us a tip.
Yeah, absolutely. I did kind of start from the bottom. My first job was just doing help desk type work for a bank and learning the computer and the network security aspects of that. I transitioned over to a network administrator to learn, how the networks are put together, how the systems are working, and all the specific components to the financial systems. Once I graduated from the local university, I got a job doing programming, which was the defense contracting work. So that gave me a lot of insight into the development of specific, tools and capabilities and things. And from there, I learned a lot about capture the flag tournaments, CTFs. If some of you know what those are, little competitions that are security related. And those kind of really got me into cybersecurity and penetration testing. I really enjoyed doing that stuff and I wanted to learn more. So I started doing the certification path, right? So I did the OSCP. And once I got that certification, I started consulting. So that was almost 8 years ago now that I started doing consulting and penetration testing. And that's where I stuck for
that is quite an interesting story. A typical starter from the bottom. I know we helped desk. Was that before or after college? I didn't quite get the timeline right.
Yeah, it was during college. So it was an internship that turned into like a job while I was attending school.
Okay, so what exactly did you just study in school? I just want to, help people understand, what the journey has been like.
When I was in school, it was 2003 that I started. So there wasn't any cybersecurity type of courses. So I went for computer science. So I learned a lot about just the internals of computers and programming mainly.
All right. Okay. So the chat box is already blowing up with questions. A lot of people want to know, if you as a pen tester, you go into an ethical hacker, how does that work? And a lot of people want to know things around, what success looks like for a pen tester. But before we go into answering all of that, I want us to clearly define who a pen tester is. I know you were here when you heard the terms being made. So who is a penetration tester, and what exactly does the role entail?
Sure. The penetration tester is somebody that gets hired to test the security of an organization, a company, or any entity that kind of wants to know how their defenses are doing. So you're essentially working as the same as what a malicious person would be doing, but you have the authorization to do so, and you're doing it without malicious intent, right? You're not trying to take down systems, you're not trying to break anything, you're not trying to steal anything, but you are trying to find the same holes that somebody could exploit to get into the system or go after something. So you're doing the bad guy things, but with good intent.
All right, here in Nigeria, we say you have the fear of God. It's something we say just to, paint it white and black, but that's really interesting. So, again, we're just going to go in depth into what day-to-day task looks like for the pen tester, and how does that differ from other types of security testing?
Sure. So with penetration testing, so days are different, but it's kind of the same set of tasks that you do. It's just that every day you're doing different components of it. So it could initially, when you're getting into work with a specific client or a customer, you go through the scoping of it, right? You want to know what they want tested, how they want it tested, and which things are okay to go after and which things are not. So that's a very specific component that's important to define. You don't want to go after anything that they basically don't give you authorization to, because then you're kind of breaching that line of what's okay and what's not okay. Once you have all that stuff defined, it goes into the different components of testing. So there's methodologies that are kind of standardized that people follow if you want to get into penetration testing. A few of those are the pen test methodology, which I can leave some links after. For web applications, it's kind of a different skill set. So there's the OWASP methodology for web application testing. That's a very thorough one that you can go through to kind of make sure that things are comprehensive. So every day would be either doing the scoping part of it or one component or multiple components of the testing phases. So doing the research, doing the enumeration, seeing what is accessible from the targets that they've scoped or what they've given you permission to go after, and then finding the vulnerabilities, exploiting them, and then going further if that's part of what they've authorized you to do. And then finally, it's documenting everything, right? The main thing that you're doing all this for is for the client. So you want to generate like a very thorough, well-written report that they can follow along to see exactly what you did, how you did it, and then how you could fix it. So part of that component is looking up and providing, the advice on how to address the things that you had found. So yeah, every day is a little bit different, but it's kind of the same methodology.
Well, that's spot on. Thank you so much, Mike. So a couple of fellows on the call want to branch into pen testing, start their careers with pen testing. And I'm sure a couple of them are wondering, how do I know it's a great fit for me? A couple of them are wondering, oh, I'm sure it must be difficult. I didn't have a background in sciences like you did, Mike. So how do I go about it? How do I know it's the best fit for me?
Yeah, it can be difficult, right? So there's so many things that you have to try and stay on top of. One of the biggest skills that you can learn is the research side. So if you're going after a system or an application, you need to be able to research, like, what is this thing? Because everybody's kind of developing their own tools, their own apps, and so you have to do a lot of research on what am I looking at, and what are the security aspects of it that I could exploit and find holes in. So a big thing is Googling, just being able to look all that stuff up. Outside of that, you have to just be really dedicated to pursuing the hands-on activities that are available to really get comfortable with doing that stuff. A big component of the job market right now is for people that come out of a university or out of a training, and they don't have the hands-on skills to actually put you in front of a computer and get you into the testing environment and learn how to test. So it's not necessarily hard if you're dedicated to doing it. I've seen lots of folks that have transitioned from totally different aspects of a career into cybersecurity, and they were just dedicated to learning about it. And it's just a constant learning experience.
Right. So earlier you mentioned some methodologies, anyone who's interested in pen testing must get acquainted with. I understand that this could be acquired through certification. So as a start, fresh out of college, did not study computer science or did study computer science, what are the certifications you advise them to start the process with? I know it's easier to start off on some certifications than it is others. So what would you suggest?
Yeah, the certification path is one way that anybody that wants to hire somebody to do this work can kind of get an idea that they can perform the tasks. OSCP, which I got it back in 2013. It's a very hands-on certification. So the whole lab component of it, which is a significant part of it, is just breaking into systems and documenting how you did so. So I feel like that is probably one of the best ones if you wanted to do my type of work, just because it's over and over again, just breaking into stuff, looking into the how to exploit, how to design an exploit, how to execute it, how to do all the post-exploitation steps. And then the certification itself is you have 24 hours to break into whatever number of machines they give you. And that's quite the experience. It can be very difficult. When I took it, it took me 22 and a half hours, basically straight to get into all the systems. So it's not, a very easy test to do, but you come out of it with a lot of the skills necessary to perform in the penetration testing role.
Right. So a couple of people are asking questions in the chat box around, oh, how do I get the skills, or how do I do this? And I think something has been recurring in your responses. It all boils down to practice. Keep trying, keep studying, practicing, and you're going to get around it. Thank you so much, Mike. Okay, so I'm just wondering, when you become a pen tester, what's the next thing you can do? How can you pivot your career? What are the other career paths open to you? Should you maybe want to switch?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you could do. So for one, if you wanted to keep going in the penetration testing and the attacking route, there's a more in-depth work that you could do called red teaming. And that ends up being similar to pen testing, except that you have a different objective, which is to not get caught by any systems that you're trying to break into. And in some cases, the companies that hire you want you to emulate specific threat actors. So it could be like, hey, we're a huge financial company and we want to see if we're protected against like some of the techniques that Russia or Iran or whatever that they're using to break into things. So you have a very specific objective for that, and you have to really look into like what those groups are doing and how they're doing it, and then you have to emulate your attacks through that. So it's a lot more advanced and a lot more specialized. The other thing you could do is switch back to the defensive side, right? So once you know all of these techniques and methods for breaking into things, you have a lot of knowledge on how to protect them. So then you could go to different businesses that want to have somebody that understands the exploitation side of it to help implement security features and methods to protect them. So it gives you a lot of insight onto doing the good guy stuff again later on.
All right, that actually answers the question that was supposed to come next. Someone was asking, do I start with offensive or do I start with the defensive? And then you just answered like it makes more sense to start off, being offensive so you understand how to be defensive. That's really smart. So I want to take, for example, I want to start off my career. There's a job I'm trying to get. What would it look like? What would minimum requirements look like for me? Do I have to get a master's? Do I have to get a specific certification? What job hunting look like for me?
So that'll depend. For a majority of the companies that are hiring, they really prefer anybody that can just demonstrate that they have the skills. They don't care as much about the education side or about the certification side if you can just basically prove to them that you can do it. Other entities, such as in the US, like the government, they want to see like a bachelor's degree at minimum, just to check a specific box. Sometimes they do want certifications like the CEH or OSCP, just because it kind of defines a specific like minimum bar to pass. But a lot of the folks are just looking for people that can do what they're trying to do. So that's kind of the main driving factor for it. And to go back to the other thing too, if you were interested in the blue side, like there's benefits of doing the defensive side, because if you start off defensive and then you switch to offensive, then you have a lot of ideas of the protections that people implement that you could then find vulnerabilities, exploit that. So there's benefits on both sides. It's not just going, from offensive to defensive. You can go the inverse too. I've had people that I work with that are more defensive side, and they've thought of really novel ways of bypassing things that are in place. So you really can't go wrong either way.
Okay, that's interesting. So I played out the scene for hiring in pen testing, and all I could just see in my head was, okay, can you get the job done? Yes. Okay, you're hired. I think that's pretty straightforward. If you're in the chat box, if you're watching right now and you want to branch into pen testing, go get those skills and you can get any job, literally. Okay, so I know you've had a very interesting career, and with interesting careers as interesting as yours, there must have been tough experiences, tough projects. I just wanted to tell me about one of the most challenging or intriguing projects you've been on, and what you learned from them.
Yeah, probably the most challenging ones were the few that I had started, because I came out of the training and from the OSCP certification just with this false idea that everything could be just broken into no matter what, right? Because everything in the OSCP lab you can hack into, and there's a vulnerability that you can exploit. But in reality, there's a lot of business politics that go into play. So there are companies that they have different motivations. So they may just want a specific, check mark to say like, hey, we're secure, but they won't actually let you look at all the systems because they know that there's potential holes somewhere. So that makes it really frustrating if you feel like you're not doing a good enough job, but only because you're kind of constrained on what you're able to do. And then the other side is that there's companies that do really good job of implementing their defenses and securing things. So you go in there really frustrated that you can't find a lot of vulnerabilities to exploit. And that is tough as somebody that's coming in as a professional doing that, because you feel like, hey, maybe I don't have the skill set that I need. So it's kind of a constant battle against yourself to try and stay on top of things. So there's been instances where I haven't been able to find enough vulnerabilities that I feel like I did a good job for that company.
All right. Okay. So as a penetration tester, can you work remotely, or do you always have to come in?
It depends on the company. Mostly it's remote. Right now I am in my basement in my house. I have worked remotely for the past 8 years. The first 2 years I probably traveled maybe 3 or 4 times a year, but since then it's mostly been fully remote. So the pandemic that we're going through, that changed a lot of things, but for the penetration testing type of work, I know companies that hire people all over the world, and as long as you're able to get the job done, they don't need you in an office.
Okay, so I'm curious, after going through your bio and hearing you speak, I just want to know what next for you right now as penetration tester. What are you going to be up to next?
Well, last year I switched over to, I saw one question in the chat about if you can work remotely or work by yourself. So I started a company that let me work independently. So now instead of working for one specific company, I do work for a variety of companies across the country as they need work. It kind of lets me it lets me have a little bit more flexibility on how much I work, especially with kids and stuff, and what I'm working on. So I get a little bit broader experience, but without reporting to specifically anybody. So it's totally possible to do work independently on your own. It's a little bit more difficult, and you don't have a team, but you can definitely pull it off. So for me, the next step is going to be to maybe see if things grow from here. Maybe I turn into a company that hires more people. Maybe not. I kind of like having the flexibility of not working 24/7 all year.
Okay, so I just have, well, this is a question. If you are not going to if you were to do something different aside becoming a penetration tester, what would you do and why?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard to. I wouldn't be able to get away from computers. I honestly wouldn't be able to. I've been doing it since I was 13 years old. Right. I just got into them. So one of the other things that I do on the side from penetration testing is I work with students that are interested in it to get them into the career field because there's so much demand. One of the things specifically, I work with a college in upstate New York here, and we do competitions for college students where they do like hands-on cybersecurity activities. One part of it is they defend their network from actual attackers, and the other part of it is like a CTF. So my responsibility for it is doing the CTF. So I think if I didn't have to do penetration testing, I would probably do these competitions, like build competitions for people that are wanting to learn, cybersecurity skills. I just don't think I would ever get away from it. It'd be hard.
That's interesting. All I can hear is how much you love to give back to the community and to the cybersecurity industry at large. So thank you so much, Mike. We really love that. Okay, so if you were to give an advice to the fellows, something you wish you knew earlier on in your career, or before you started on your career, what would that advice be?
So the main thing is there's two components to being successful when you're working in this field that I've learned. One is the hard skills, being able to perform and do what you're being tasked to do. But the other side of it is the communication, the networking, and the report writing skills, right? Because if you can communicate effectively and you can talk to people, especially your clients, in a way that you can get them to understand the work that you're doing and why it's important, that ends up being just as beneficial as the hard skills. The companies that are hiring, they want people that they can have talk to clients and describe, why we should do certain things, what we should do, and kind of really make them feel like they're getting what they want to get out of it. Because some of the companies, they just don't have a good grasp on the implications of the work that we're doing. So they want, some testing done, but, related to one of the questions there, like, how does the consultancy work? You have to come in there as somebody that's an expert and kind of guide them along to give them information on what's best for them. There's obviously companies out there that are just there to capitalize on the opportunity. But they're not actually looking out for the best interests of the clients. And for me, that's not the way to go. I really do care about making a difference for the people that I'm doing testing for. And, I want them to understand, what they're going to get out of it, benefits wise, and if it's not worth, the time and effort for them.
Okay, so I have a few more questions before we can let you go. The first is, someone's wondering, if I need to set up a home office, what tools would I need? And I want us to pair that question with one I initially had, which is, what tools would you need to know how to use as a penetration tester? I know that this varies from company to company, but just give us some tools.
Sure. And I have as much time as you want. I know we have an 8:30 end, but I'm willing to hang out longer if you have the time. I don't want to cut anybody else off, but I'm happy to discuss further. So from the tools perspective, the Kali Linux, I'm sure quite a few people are familiar with that. That has a lot of tools that you can learn with. It has quite a few of the standard tools, things like Metasploit and Nmap, and I mean, there's a whole list of them. If you're interested on the web application side, there's a couple ways to go about it. That would be using Burp Suite, and if you want to go the free route, because Burp costs a little bit of money, there is OWASP Zap. And that's it kind of similar to Burp, where you can learn how to do the web application specific testing.
Okay, so thank you so much. So if you that I think that answers the home lab question as well. Okay,
I do. Great. I mean, there's a good benefit to having like a home lab. I have a few servers in my other room here, which I use just to set up environments to test on, because one of the things is, like, you're doing all these malicious things and you want to be able to make sure that you're doing them safely. So either using something like a cheap server where you can just install VMs and then you could try and set them up to attack them yourselves. That's a great way to do it. Other opportunities are things like TryHackMe, excuse me, and Hack the Box. They give you access to a lot of vulnerable systems to test out either tools that you want to learn about or tools that you're building. So I know plenty of people that'll build a tool and then go into hack the box and then test their tools against different systems to see how they work. Those give you environments that you can try that stuff out with if you don't want to build one at home.
Okay, so when you answered one of the questions earlier, you were speaking about how, if you can show that you know what you're doing, that's the best way to get the job. But how does a newbie, someone who's just getting to the industry, best pitch themselves and display this knowledge? I know that a lot of people do that by attending CTFs and just showcasing themselves. But how else would you suggest that you go about that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that, because there was somebody that I was working with recently that just transitioned. They were really interested in getting a job in cybersecurity and penetration testing, and then they ended up just getting a job. And the main thing that they did was they went into those labs like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box. They went through the process of exploiting them, and then they wrote up their methodology and what they did for the retired boxes, which are the ones that are kind of like the ones that they're kind of cycling out. And then they did a post on LinkedIn every time that they broke into one of those boxes and just essentially wrote a small report on how they did it. And that was, to me, that was the most impressive thing that they could have done, because they said, hey, I've demonstrated that I have the skills to do so, and I'm able to communicate how I did that. And then this person had probably like 40 or 50 of those posts. And I was just like, hey, you're ready to go. Like you're good to go interview with whoever you want to. And he got the first job that he applied for just because of that type of thing. So that's something that I would definitely recommend. I saw a few people connect with me on LinkedIn. So that goes a long way. So that's an easy way to demonstrate all of the skill sets that are required.
Okay, that's really interesting, because I think in the last part of the program, we had a lady start up a blog where she just went on and on about the things she's been learning. And it was quite interesting, because I think at that point you're showcasing not just your knowledge, your expert knowledge, but also your writing abilities and ability to report. So yes, that's really interesting. So someone's asking, they asked before, what is the difference between writing a penetration test report and debrief report?
I'm not familiar specifically with the debrief report, but if I'm guessing correctly, there's kind of two components. So one is like the penetration testing report is very detailed in how each step was performed and what was found. Part of that, which could either be a separate report or a section in the main report, is kind of like an executive thing. So what you want to do is you want to write it at a level that somebody that's not doing all of the fixes can understand the problems that were found. So it's kind of a higher level description of what was found, but without getting into all like the very specific tech language and jargon and things like that. You just want to be able to go to somebody that doesn't know about security and explain to them, hey, here's all the things that we found and why they're bad, so that it kind of motivates them to implementing the fixes. And then those detailed reports go to the analysts or the administrators that can actually make those changes.
All right. So nowhere to speak jargons. I think that's my key take back. Nowhere to speak all the jargons. Okay, so which is better, Kali Linux or Parrot OS security?
I haven't played around with Parrot OS a lot, so I wouldn't be able to say. I mean, Kali is a good one to have to play around with a lot of tools. But I haven't tried Parrot, so I'd have to test that out and get back to you on that. I feel like any of them are fine. You could go with even a non-security distribution and find all the tools and learn how to install them and run them yourself. That's just as good as any other way, without them being all set up and everything for you.
Okay, so a couple of people want to know. I think I saw one person who wants to know if they could get a link to some of the CTFs you posted. I think those are closed and open occasionally, or do you have them open source, or how do your CTFs, the CTFs you organize, work?
Yeah, so right now most of them are closed. They like run at specific times. The last one that I did was at DEF CON last year, DEF CON Red Team Village CTF. That is coming back this year in August. The other ones related to the university, I can post a link. We're in the process of open sourcing the old challenges that we used for anybody that wants to practice with them. But that's a work in progress. I don't know if that'll be done before the summer, but I'm happy to share a link if anybody wants to play around with those challenges.
I'm sure they'd love to, everyone's eager to learn, and that's the community you just met. Okay, so I'm just going to be asking you one last question before we call it a day. As you can see, you really exhausted the questions, answering them very well. We just want to know if you could be physically present anywhere in the world right now, where would you be?
Oh gosh. So when I got married 5 years ago, we took our honeymoon in partially in France and partially in Switzerland, and the mountain area in Switzerland was probably one of the most beautiful places that I've been. So I would probably want to go back there and just kind of relax a little bit. With the last 2 years of all this, pandemic and craziness, just going out there and just kind of relaxing in the mountains a little bit sounds really, really great.
Oh, who wouldn't love that? To just sit back and relax. Well, we hope you do get to have a vacation and it's sometime soon, given that you have a newborn. But we'll be wishing you the best. So, a lot of us would like to follow you specifically because we want that link. You can drop the link in the comments in the chat box. But also, we'll reach out to get the link so we can circulate as well. We'll also love to follow you on social media. I know a couple of people have gone to LinkedIn to follow you already. But also, what other platforms can we follow? Is there a blog you have? Is there some social media accounts you're really active on as well?
Yeah, I on Twitter, I'm at Mike Hacks Things. I don't tweet a whole ton. I'm trying to get more into the blogging side, so I can drop some links to that. And anybody that's interested in talking more, I'm happy to do so outside of this realm. So feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or anywhere else if you want to. If you have questions that I wasn't able to get to, or you just want to get some tips and just get some advice on if you're on the right path for what you want to do, like that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy. So I'm happy to discuss ongoing after this after this little chat here.
Okay, so would you mind telling us your handle on LinkedIn? I already guess your Mike Lisi as well, or does that change in LinkedIn?
I believe that's correct. There's my Twitter that I just left in chat there. And yeah, that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. I have like the direct messaging open. I see some other people dropping things. I'm going to try and copy these so I can follow everybody. But yeah, that's probably the best way to get either way. Like Twitter or LinkedIn is going to be best.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. Before you leave, is there any book you're currently reading or any book you like to recommend to people starting off in the community, or a podcast?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. There is so on the podcast side, I really like Darknet Diaries. It's a podcast about just lots of hacks and people that have gotten off to the wrong track, right? So they had very specific ideas and motivations, and they probably weren't the best. So it's a lot of lessons learned and how things can get go very poorly for you, but very interesting stories as well. Books. Right now, I just picked up one that's called what is it called? Hacking APIs. It's on No Starch Press. So that one is going to be for kind of a subset of web application security. That is what I'm reading at the moment. And I see Brenda left a comment on the salary range. That's going to vary quite a bit. So when I first started in the US, I don't know, globally how things work, but in the US, it was around 75,000 US for an entry level. And then on the senior level, it kind of gets to about double that. So there's a huge range. It's a good career to get involved with if you're looking to make some decent money because the demand is there. So folks are willing to pay for the skill set and for the experience.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. And just give Mike a round of applause in the chat box. We love you so much, Mike. Thank you so much. We appreciate you taking time to speak to us. And don't forget, follow him on LinkedIn. You can go ahead on Twitter. And yes, thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate it. This was really cool. I'm excited to be a part of it.
We look forward to having you some other time. Goodbye. All right. Thank you, everyone, for making our time to be part of this session. I'm sure you enjoyed everything that was shared, all of the knowledge shared. Don't forget to follow him. And if you're going to go in, just go in and ask the questions. He's happy to answer them. I'm sure some people will be left confused now what path to follow. He obviously didn't answer every question you could possibly have, but that's why we have Google to just keep you can just keep asking your questions there. Feel free to follow other industry leaders as well, and you can ask him some of your other questions in private as well. So thank you so much, everyone, and that will be all for today. I'll see you in the next session. Goodbye.